Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mitch Rapp podcast. So, how was your vacation, Mike?
Oh, dude, it was a blast. I was all over.
Well, you were gone like 2 weeks. We conveniently split our pod in two, and recorded it all at once. I listened to it, and it was pretty seamless. So I didn't even realize.
Yeah, we did that as like one 2.5 hour session, just talking The Last Man, and then spliced it into two parts. So yeah, I've been out of town. It was nice. Went upstate New York, saw some friends in New Hampshire, visited my parents and my brother and my nieces on Long Island. So kind of a big loop of, the Northeast. So it was good. It was good. How about you? What's new?
Finally, so this is the first pod I'm recording from my desk. So my desk was here, but it just had a bunch of boxes and crap on top and in front of it. So Mike even commented when we got on the Zoom. He's like, "Whoa, I see books on a shelf and I can see the room." And yeah, so my house is at a state where my anxiety level is lower. So it's much nicer like walking in and not seeing, just random crap everywhere.
You look pretty settled. You look like you hit your groove. You're settled in, not just the background of your house, but you too. The last few pods, I was like, oh man, is he all right? Like, is this getting to him? But you got it together.
Well, Caroline and the kids went to the beach last weekend, and
Okay.
I wasn't gonna go to. My buddy has this annual boys retreat of like all these. He's unmarried, and he has a lot of married friends. And so he invites them to his house and they golf and drink and play Civil War and stuff like that. So I wasn't going to go, but then she was like, "No, you should go." And I went and I came back and I felt great. And so, I need some me time.
All right. It seemed to have energized you. I can tell.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk Mitch Rapp, man.
Yeah, let's jump on the Rapp train. But since you brought it up, the last episode was great. And I've even had a few people tweet at us and comment that they really appreciated our analysis of The Last Man. And I mean, how could you not? The book is just fantastic. And so to anybody who reached out or enjoyed last week's episode, thank you. Thanks for following us. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah, no, when I look back on it, like, I don't know why I didn't have that in my top 5 or, it's now in my top 3 for sure. Like it's such a good book.
Right.
It's such a concise, we said it on the pod. It's a concise book that is jam-packed, no fluff.
Right.
Perfect from start to finish. We were even struggling to like find a loser at the end,
Right.
Like that's a sign of a good book,
Yep. So many well-rounded characters who played a purpose.
Right.
Like the typical Vince Flynn's characters are not just that one character, they represent something. And with the mess that was Afghanistan and the mess that is Afghanistan right now,
currently,
Vince, he's a soothsayer, right? Like what he did with those characters and the relationships between the different organizations they represented, just the clusterfuck that things are. Man, can we just vote for him next election? I'm going to write in Vince Flynn.
That'd be great. I mean,
let's start the campaign.
It's kind of ironic how we did Last Man, and then all this shit went down in
Right.
Afghanistan, and I don't know. It was meant to be, I guess.
And that was his book, his commentary on, a post-September 11th world, essentially, and we were doing it right as things unfolded. It's like this podcast was just meant to be.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had a chance to. I don't watch Fox News, so I didn't watch his interviews, but I did read his pieces. Jack Carr has had a couple nice opinion pieces about the whole situation. Obviously, he was heavily involved over there, and he just has some interesting insight. I know fans of the pod like him, so go check him out. He has a couple nice pieces on his blog, just giving his thoughts. Yeah, it's a tough time because I even have my neighbor, my grandma's neighbor, who she lost her husband early on in the war. Like, I want to say 2005, 2006. And she just posted on Facebook. She was like, can someone just tell me like what this all means? Like, why did I lose my husband? And it's very sad,
Right.
No, I don't know.
Right.
It's a tough time. Tough time everywhere.
Yeah.
Delta's coming back, and
dude, I'm back in school, and we barely have any protections against this. There's a lot going on, man.
Anyways.
Well, we and our listeners
have Mitch Rapp. We have Mitch Rapp.
We get to escape. We get an hour together each week to dive into Mitch Rapp. I don't want to say escapism because Vince dealt with the problems of the world in a way that a lot of us, like he's even smarter, than a lot of you, me, our listeners, everybody. So it's not escapism away from reality, but just gives you a fun way to grapple with it and think about it. So,
right. And we have something to look forward to. Kyle's new book, Enemy at the Gates.
Yes.
Yeah, I figured here we could talk about any updates, but unfortunately there haven't been. And this time last year we had already had the dates for his virtual book tour.
Right.
I don't know. I know that was like a special case because of how the pandemic was last year. If they're even doing a virtual book tour this year, because he is over in Spain, I think. So
right.
I assume there'll be another virtual book tour. We haven't yet gotten a request to do an interview for a virtual hour at some different book venue, but we're still waiting there. David Brown, the bus.
Wouldn't mind getting that email saying you get hooked up with Kyle for a virtual event, but we don't want to push too hard on that.
Oh, I'll push.
But, yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen anything about the tour either, but we can give you updates about how we're going to cover the newest Mitch Rapp book here on the pod. And we're actually going to call an audible. We decided to switch things up a little bit. And you'll be listening to this episode, I guess, next week after we record. It'll practically be September already. So we are going to make The Survivor our September book of the month. That way we can continue with the storyline of The Last Man. And it's been so impactful wrapping up Vince's final book that we want to do justice to that transition and that arc that Kyle completed with The Survivor. So we are going to hold off on Enemy at the Gates, which also gives you guys, the listeners, a bit of time to get the book, pre-order it if you haven't. We got to say that. September 15th, I think, is the publication date. And so we're going to do Enemy at the Gates in October. That way you have a couple of weeks to pick up your copy, dig into it, then hear from us in October, which will also allow us September to do The Survivor and cover the transition to Kyle Mills.
Yeah, we're only bumping it back 2 weeks. You're going to get it early October, so don't worry. But I'll just say, both me and Mike have read this book, and it's so good. We need the extra time to think about it and break it down. So
yeah,
we won't say much more there. But
you got to process.
I think this book, we like Total Power. You less than me. This book is way better than Total Power.
Oh, you're agreeing with me then. Okay.
Oh, it's way better than Total Power.
Okay,
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%.
So that's all we'll say.
Well, actually, we'll say a little bit more, but it will only be with our patrons because we know they're chomping at the bit. We love them. We appreciate them. So we've got a date to hang out with our patrons. And as long as everyone on the call has read Enemy at the Gates, we could chat about that. We could chat about anything Mitch Rapp, and we just also want to get to know you and have you guys get to know us. So next Thursday, September 2nd, well, actually, by the time you listen to this episode, yeah, that will be this Thursday. So just a few days. September 2nd, we're going to be hanging out with our patrons, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to be involved in that, just sign up at patreon.com/MitchRappPod. You'll get some podcast stickers. We're going to make a new order of bookmarks soon, so you get the first round of our newest bookmark we'll be dropping, and you'll be entered into our giveaways. We've given away, what have we done, Chris? Maybe 10, 11 autographed Mitch Rapp books already, and we're going to continue the giveaways, so patreon.com/MitchRappPod. Sign up, and you can join us to chat Enemy at the Gates and have a virtual hangout event Thursday, September 2nd.
Yes.
Mark's been bugging us about the date.
He wants to talk enemy of the gates, doesn't he?
Yep.
He does.
Yep. All right. Well, Chris, all those updates, lots of info to throw at you, but tell us, what are we covering today?
Right. So you mentioned earlier Vince having these plethora of characters, especially characters that are not our main characters, but have an importance to the story. So, kind of like we did with the Stansfield episode, where we sort of did a tribute talking about him, his impact throughout the novels, we wanted to take a step back and look at some minor characters that are specifically involved with, why am I blanking on his name? Scott Coleman. There we go. Are specifically involved with Scott Coleman and his team of the SEAL Demolition and Salvage, right? So, we sort of came up with this topic because, we lost one of the team in our last book, The Last Man, and, Mike just went down a rabbit hole, picked a couple of these people that were that have been mentioned throughout the time, being various parts of the crew, and how they served. So we just thought, we'd go back, visit some of these people, and just riff on this.
Yeah, so we got Mick Reavers, and the other two are throwbacks to earlier Vince with Hackett and Stroble, Kevin Hackett and Dan Stroble. And I thought, hey, we lost Mick Reavers. I don't think he ever gets a mention again. I don't remember Kyle ever using his name. And Kennedy wants his body back from Afghanistan. We heard her say that. But we thought we'd give him a tribute because he's out of the picture. And then it made me think, who else was on Scott Coleman's demolition and salvage, team? And Hackett and Stroble. They were in a bunch of books, and then they just kind of disappeared. So it's kind of a tribute to them as well, because I don't believe Kyle brings them up at all, and Vince hasn't brought them up in quite a few books. So we'll cover these three characters. Let me ask you a question. If I were to just ask you, which of the three would you say show up in more of Vince Flynn's books? Like, out of these 3 or 4 names, would you say it's Mick Reavers, Hackett and Stroble, or Joe Maslick that comes up the most? Like, what just comes to the top of your mind?
Joe Maslick.
That's what I would have thought. He only comes up in 3 Flynn books.
Really?
Yeah.
But Kyle uses them a lot, right?
Right. Kyle has Maslick come up quite a bit. But when I was going through these characters, Maslick only comes up 3 times. What would you say between Mick Reavers and Hackett and Stroble?
Mick Reavers.
Mick Reavers is only in 3 books.
Really?
And Hackett and Stroble are in 5 books. Early
I didn't know that. The early Vince. That was the core.
Right. Hackett
along
and
with
Stroble,
Wicker, because Wicker's been there since the beginning.
Yeah, I think Wick's been in all of them and continues in Kyle's books.
Right.
So
right. But I remember Wicker wasn't a part of the team because he was actually still wasn't in term limits, or one of the novels he was still like in the military,
active duty.
And then they get him out. Like once he gets out, then Scott brings him onto his team.
Was that maybe transfer of power when they needed him as a sniper?
Yeah, that's what it was. Transfer of power. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess during transfer of power, he was still active. Wow. Yeah, so he definitely is number 1 of the crew that is in most books. But I never realized Mick Reavers was only in transfer of power, and he was not brought back again or mentioned until Pursuit of Honor.
Interesting.
That's eight books in between where Mick Reavers helped out with the hit on the White House and transfer of power, and then didn't show up again until he was the extra muscle in Pursuit of Honor. So I just didn't expect that. Prepping these notes, I was like, oh, Mick Reavers got to be in like 5, 6, 7 books. And he only made 3 Vince Flynn books.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe like the Mick Reavers, Hackett and Stroble, in my mind, they just sort of all 3 run together. Like they're the same character, and it's just like a different, because we don't really get a backstory on these guys, right?
Not much. We know Hackett and Stroble were SEAL Team 6 with Scott.
Okay.
He handpicked them. They were the first 2 in the company with him. I believe Mick Reavers was a SEAL. Yes. Okay. Yes. Because here's where we meet Mick Reavers. Transfer of power opens with Rapp with the amphibious landing on the beach in Bandar Abbas.
Right.
And he rendezvous with a group that's going to help him attack that safe house where they're harboring that terrorist he picks up. And so on the beach, when he first gets together with the group, we meet Mick Reavers. So Mick Reavers is one of the earlier characters
that we meet
in the whole Mitch Rapp saga. I guess excluding the term limits people.
Right.
But one of the first few people with Rapp that we ever meet.
Right.
And so here's what happens on the beach in Bandar Abbas. You know, I got my quotes. This is the first quote about Mick Reavers. Rapp pulled the group into a tight circle. He had worked with all of the SEALs on previous missions and greeted them individually. Harris had brought along 4 of his best. To Rapp's right was Mick Reavers, a big linebacker type who weighed in at about 250 pounds.
A big boy.
Big guy. I think there's a good quote about his size. Oh, yeah. And then in Pursuit of Honor, here's another quote describing Mick Reavers. And I like this one a lot. Mick Reavers was Coleman's one-man wrecking crew. He was built like an NFL linebacker, only meaner.
That's awesome. So you get this impression of just this like giant, enormous guy.
Right.
In my mind, I also think that Joe Maslick is another big dude.
Right.
Versus, right, Wicker is described as this small,
right,
shifty, mousy guy who can crawl in any spaces, hide and whatever. And then I guess Hackett and Stroble are just your average SEAL-looking dudes.
Right. Not too big where they stand out.
Not too big, but,
Yeah.
Kind of like what Scott looks like.
I think of Hackett, Stroble, and Scott looking pretty similar, but they don't have the blonde hair, blue eyes.
Exactly.
They're like, just your general American-looking SEAL dude who's not like super in your face. I'm a monster, like 6'8", 250.
So, side note, but kind of related. In your mind, what does Mitch Rapp look like?
Oh, Rapp? I thought you were
Yes.
going to say Reavers because I just started fan casting Mick Reavers in my mind. In my mind, Rapp has long-ish hair, which we all know, so I actually think Gerard Butler with his hair slightly out a bit, like to a T. That's what I picture.
Okay, and then like build, like the same sort of build.
Same sort of build as Gerard Butler. Like he's not that tall. He's super
sort
ripped,
of average height,
but ripped like in a way that you're not going to be like
300
ripped bodybuilder. No,
like 300. No, not 300 ripped.
Like actually, not White House Down. Olympus Has Fallen. Gerard Butler with longer hair. Like that is what I think of.
Okay, so that's similar to what I think of. To me, he's a little bit skinnier, but still like ripped because he's like that athletic guy.
True. Yeah, I'll agree. Yep.
For some reason, I always think of him as just like a skinnier Gerard Butler, but skinnier, but like still muscly,
And a little darker. I forgot to add. Definitely a little more olive tone.
And like the eyes, like
the dark black eyes. Yep.
Someone who can obviously, we know that he can pass as a native in a lot of these Middle Eastern countries, right?
Right.
At least Vince always says that.
Right.
Now, what do you think of for Scott Coleman? Someone taller than Mitch, obviously.
Taller, slightly lankier than Mitch, but almost like a Norwegian. Like just if you just think of a typical Jack Norwegian dude, that's what I think of. Even though I know he's American, but he's got the blonde hair, the blue eyes.
I think of like Chris Hemsworth-esque, but like a little bit taller, Thor,
Yeah, no, I could see that. Little taller, less built. I don't know why. I guess Scott Coleman, you're right, would be beefier than Rapp. But for some reason in my mind, I don't think that way. But he is.
And so, all right, to take this full circle, who would you cast, or in your mind, knowing these two brief quotes about him being like a linebacker, give us a linebacker or someone who you think could play Mick Reavers. They obviously can't be too famous, but you know.
So back to Mick Reavers. Yeah. I'm not good with actors and stuff, so I'll try to just think of like a character. Oh, I don't know. I can't think of like super huge actors that would be like that size. Do you have someone in mind?
I think of like a really tall Vin Diesel for some reason.
Yeah. Okay.
Like Fast
like
9 Vin Diesel, when he's like or even like The Rock,
Yeah. I think body type, both of those definitely work. And this is going to sound super weird. Super weird. I think of like if Jonah Hill were jacked. For some reason, just the facial look to me is what I think of as a Mick Reavers. I know the body type is missing, but you put his kind of facial features on a Rock or a Vin Diesel type size body frame, and that's I don't know where this is coming from, but that's what I think of as a Mick Reavers.
Or this is deep cut. So Jon Favreau. But not the current Jon Favreau, like where he's fat and he's in Chef and the he's
so
happy,
slightly younger, more fit. One.
So you remember him from? Did you ever see Four Christmases?
Oh,
with Vince
yes.
Vaughn?
Oh, when he was kind of jacked wearing those tight
t-shirts.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thinking he was a wrestler.
Right. Or
yes, you're right.
He was in The Replacements, where I think he played a linebacker. He was like this crazy dude who was in prison. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Keanu Reeves. I saw that movie
a long time
That's
ago.
a long. He was fit back in that movie.
I wouldn't have even known he was in it, to be honest. I saw it when I was freaking a kid.
It was way, probably before he got super huge. But
Mick Reavers has to have, when the traps
super
are just
broad,
bulging out exactly those
huge traps.
When like
huge
you
traps.
can't tell where your neck ends and your traps begin. Like that's got to be Mick Reavers.
Yes.
Holding two suitcases.
For sure. Yes. Yeah, but he plays a pretty important role in Transfer of Power, right? He helps Wicker get into position at the post office when they need him to be that sniper. He's also, point person for the whole parachute scene onto the roof. I think he saves one of his commanders from falling off the roof. There's that whole scene where
he
they're
overshot,
coming in. Yeah, they overshot and he saves them. I remember that was a great scene at the time.
A gust of wind blew in and he was
right.
His commander was going to fall off the roof of the White House with his chute. Yes. And I think Reavers just grabs him. Like he's dangling off the side of the White House and he just grabs him putting those, those traps and those lats to work.
Right. I remember at the time we nitpicked the whole ending to this book, but right. there's little episodes within that ending that are great. And that's one of them was, the whole, hey ho jump or hey ho, hey low. I don't.
Yeah, I forget high altitude, high opening. I think. Yeah, I think it was hey ho if I remember properly.
Okay.
I honestly don't know the difference.
The military aficionados who listen to the spot are screaming at their phone right now. So.
It was a halo jump. How did you not know that?
And then there's that whole scene where he's just running out of the house carrying two hostages, running out of the White House carrying two hostages.
You remember Rapp during that scene is like a freaking drill sergeant. He's like, move faster. And he's getting all the people out. It specifically says whoever was there, Hackett and Stroble no, they weren't there yet, but this Dan Harris guy, which I'm curious what happens. He was in the military. Was not the commander of the group. Dan Harris was. So I'm wondering where's he been? He never gets mentioned ever again.
Right.
And Rapp and Vince writes a little backstory on him. And Rapp seems to know him when they rendezvous at Bandar Abbas. So I'm like, where's Dan Harris? But anyway, yeah. So they're all coming out the White House. And it's each person was carrying one hostage, who was injured or not moving fast enough. Reavers just picks up two hostages and just starts running with them out of the White House before it explodes.
Right.
Dude, that's good stuff. How is it that we don't see him for 8 books after that? I would have never guessed that.
I guess maybe he doesn't blend in well.
True.
So
true.
Obviously, in Transfer of Power, we're talking about something that's just a military takedown. They don't really care about situational awareness.
Right. Separation of power. You can't take him into Baghdad to impersonate Hussein.
Right.
Executive power. You can't take that guy
can't
into
take him
the
the
Filipino
Philippines.
jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah. So, and then I guess that he could have been there Memorial Day.
Memorial Day goes so fast. It's just too fast. Rapp can't even bring in any teammates. It's so fast.
True. I guess he just has Scott, and that's it. And I'm sure there's like other men there, but it's just not mentioned. And there's probably some books other that he just doesn't rely on Scott and his team that much. It's just Scott and getting to him to do stuff.
And Scott brings in Hackett and Stroble instead, his own men.
Sure, right.
Where Mick Reavers, it seems like if he's on the op that attacks the White House in transfer of power,
he's active duty.
Right, when Scott Coleman is not even mentioned, because basically Scott is only known by Stansfield from the whole term limits thing, and he's kind of doing black ops for Stansfield, or is about to, in the third option. So yeah, Scott and crew was not brought in during the transfer of power raid. So yeah, Mick Reavers, as of now, it seems is distanced from Scott's company, which actually probably hasn't even been founded yet, perhaps.
Yeah, I've always wanted to get an explanation of like the timeline of when term limits, like that would be one of my questions I would ask Vince. Like when term limits ends, when does a transfer of power start?
Right.
Is it like 8 months? Is it 8 years? Not 8 years, but like years? Are we talking years, months, days?
Well, so, I went down the rabbit hole, and when I was rereading some of the scenes, which one came up was the description of the baseball game, the Orioles game.
Yes.
And there were more clues in that than I originally picked up on. So, yeah, when Scott is basically... I think, it's the third option. When we're first hearing about Scott's company, we first meet Hackett and Stroble. Scott is talking to Hackett and Stroble, and they're like, where the hell are we going? They're kind of questioning him, like, what is this mission? You usually bring us into the fold and tell us. And Scott's like, I guess I'm going to have to tell them something. And in his mind, he's like, we're actually going to help out an old friend, Thomas Stansfield, and Iron Man. And that's when I forget if it's Hackett or Stroble, but as soon as they hear Iron Man, one of them kind of like shits the bed. Hackett. Kevin Hackett goes, oh, fucking James Bond. And then they both start like, this shit must be real. And that's when Scott's like, do I tell them about my relationship with Iron Man? And Scott recalls the baseball game. Listen to what he says about when he saw Rapp. Listen to this. So Scott bumps into Michael O'Rourke and Liz O'Rourke at the game, who were on a double date
with Anna
Riley and Mitch. And Scott says, quote, sitting across the table was someone he, Scott, hadn't seen since he'd left the SEALs. Coleman had seen him operate in the field twice. They were about to cross paths again. You know what that means? Scott ran into Mitch twice after kill shot because he says Rapp was in the field.
Right.
So
okay. All right.
Scott ran into Mitch while he was still presumably in SEAL Team 6. Yeah, or commander of SEAL Team 6. So something that Scott did before term limits, before he went off and snapped in term limits, he crossed paths twice with Mitch after Mitch's training.
I still love how like Scott was the villain of term limits. Like he was the villain, but not the villain,
Right.
And it's just never mentioned again. Like no. He gets completely changed into a different character. Like he's a completely different character, kinda. But like it's not mentioned that he took out 4 senators, or a congressman and 2 senators or whatever. Okay. I don't know. It's just crazy.
Okay, there's one that sounds like a crazy, like you got to suspend belief, to kind of move on. But there's one reason I buy it, and it's the power of Thomas Stansfield.
True. No, you're right. You're right.
what Stansfield does in that conversation to bring Coleman in.
Oh, that's essentially him turning. It's like it's the spy is being a spy master and
Right.
flipping an asset. He's flipping an asset.
That's why I buy it, because if Stansfield could do all of that behind, the Iron Curtain, and he can turn people, and he can work these like triple agents and mastermind all that, I have no doubt he could take someone who was so seemingly off the deep end that they assassinate the Speaker of the House and convince them to work for us and channel that patriotism. Because Stansfield recognized Scott, a SEAL Team 6 commander, going off the deep end would not be good for America. No. He would be enforcing his own term limits, and we never get him. And the power of Stansfield to work him into the fold, I think that's plausible.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like it's Stansfield is the one who brought him back to the light. He has the leverage on him. So Scott can never, change allegiances because, you're going to go to jail because I have evidence that you killed a United States senator.
Right.
And a congressman, so.
And the other thing is we do know Scott still has a bit of that streak in him when he accepts Kennedy's orders without asking questions.
Yeah.
Like Kennedy,
exactly.
like Mike
Kennedy
Nash
has those files too, so.
Well, Mike Nash was right to question Kennedy in The Last Man, in the sense of she was saying spy on the FBI. And like by the book, anybody with half a brain would know that one day that's going to bite you in the ass and you're going to be hauled in front of a committee and you broke the law. Scott saying yes ma'am right away and is so willing to bug the FBI and like track them down and do all her dirty work shows he's still got that edgy streak of I'm your black ops guy. So Stansfield didn't 100% clean Scott up, but put him on a path to have his own company, to work for the United States government, to join the good guys. Scott's arc is awesome. If you include term limits. Without term limits, he's a little flat.
Yeah, but I think like having term limits there really fills out the character. It makes it more substantial.
It really does. And then his relationship with Seamus also was pretty deep. Michael O'Rourke's grandfather. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of dimensions to Scott that you wouldn't see if you just think, he runs the SEAL company. He does our dirty work.
There's a couple books that he plays a bigger role, but most books he's just like back in the shadows.
Right.
But we'll have to do a whole episode on Scott one day.
Yeah, Scott will definitely have his time to shine. Glad to see that Kyle definitely uses Scott quite a bit. Yes. Here and there. It's spotty in some books, but most of the time.
My favorite Scott scene with Kyle is not favorite, but like when he gets like taken down by Grisha and you think like he's dead, like that was like a oh shit moment.
Yeah, Kyle did some.
And it shows like how in that moment how talented or how scary Grisha Azeroth actually is.
Right.
I can't wait to talk about him too. He's a cool character.
I'm really excited for him too. Kyle got that part right, big time.
Yeah, so some of Kyle characters are very good.
Yep. Hey, Hackett and Stroble, since we got there in third option when we meet them, here's a little bit.
Sorry, just before you go on, you forgot to mention, so the whole reason we went down this rabbit hole was because the last time we see Mick Reavers is in The Last Man.
The Last Man,
he is unfortunately taken out. And there's a mention of like this deep relationship between Joe Maslick and Mick Reavers.
Right.
Yet that's the only time we've ever seen them together. I thought that was interesting. Instead of putting maybe Mick Reavers, instead of like having Mick with, say, a Hackett or Stroble, or just Scott in general, like to have Maslick be that, I guess it adds like a different element to know like Maslick's been there a long time and everything that we don't see off book, like they're building these deep relationships. So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Maslick, when he sees Reavers go down, he flips the switch. Like he goes beast mode in that fight at the vet in Last Man.
Exactly.
And what a relationship just in a few sentences these two have, when one loses a teammate. Yet, in all the Vince Flynn books, those two have never been together. And it's actually only each of their third books. You know, Mick only had 2 books, and Maslick only has had 2 other books besides Last Man. Yet, their bond was so deep when they were in the trenches together. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Right.
Well, speaking of two friends with a deep bond, Hackett and Stroble, actually, I only found one scene where they were separated.
I was just about to ask you that.
Without the other.
Because every single time it's always Hackett and Stroble. Like Hackett and Stroble. Like I was just about to ask you, do we ever see them not together?
Okay. It was such a small detail that one was driving Mitch somewhere and the other one wasn't mentioned, and it was the only scene I've ever seen one of their names mentioned without the other also.
This is the power of Kindle audio, like word find, right? Yeah.
Yep. Being able to search in the Kindle is how I went through every one of the Mitch Rapp books and just searched Mick Reavers, Hackett, Stroble, Joe Maslick, and just tallied which ones they were in. All right, here's that scene though. Act of treason. So we had Hackett and Stroble for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. Everything from Third Option through Consent to Kill. And they were never mentioned apart from each other until Act of Treason, which I think you'll remember this scene. Rapp was in hot water trying to investigate the man with the red hat who blew up the motorcade.
Right.
And so he has to get back to America, but he knows the authorities are going to be waiting for him at the airport. Stroble shows up at the airport and does the bait and switch with the vans. He pretends to be a maintenance worker, and he takes Rapp and his hostage that he exfilled into a van, and they drive off together. But that's the only time Stroble was mentioned without Hackett.
Interesting.
Oh, and then actually, here's another thing about Act of Treason. You want to know Mitch Rapp trivia? Get ready for this. Hackett is the one later in the book who goes with Wicker to the bank to blackmail, I think it's a Swiss banker, at the safety deposit box for Gozich, the guy in the red hat.
Right.
And out of all the 5 books they're in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 books are in. This is the only book where Hackett is spelled with 1 T.
Interesting. That didn't get caught.
Hackett with 2 T's in every other book.
I may be wrong, but for some reason, I feel like Scott Coleman one time was spelled with 1 T.
You think? No.
Because I'm probably out
You're
of my
thinking
mind,
Harvath, man.
I know that's what it is. I'm like, why am I thinking this? It's Scott with 1 T.
Yeah, Scott with 1 T
is
Harvath.
Never mind.
No, but can you imagine if there's one mention in one Vince Flynn book where they purposefully left out the second T, just kind of as a nod to Brad Thor, because so many people confuse them, right? The 2 Scotts, 1 T, 2 T's. I wonder if they ever did that.
No, it's probably just Vince forgot how to spell his minor character's name.
I wonder if that's similar to Anna Riley with the I and the E being switched.
Exactly.
Or Mary Maureen.
That one. All right. That's what you need to do.
It's Maureen.
For the next. Did you go back and you could Google search this like Maureen and Mary in Transfer of Power?
Hold on. I'm going to defer to the de facto source, the world's biggest Mitch Rapp fan, Ryan Steck. I was looking through his blog, and it was Maureen the Dream Elliott. So I think if Ryan Steck is calling the shots, I'm okay with that. It's Maureen.
Okay, and then later on, when we get to American Assassin, it's now Mary.
American Assassin is the only book where it says Mary instead of Maureen. Every other time the story's recalled or mentioned in not a flashback, but like a recall, it's always Maureen. For some reason,
so I'm not insane.
No. Mary was in American Assassin. That's what they called her, but I don't know.
It shocked me when I heard George Waddell say Mary. Like,
same.
And I was like, did he read that wrong?
Right.
But then you said it was in your Kindle. It came up as Mary.
I even looked in my hard copy of American Assassin, and it was Mary.
Interesting. Okay. See, it's only right here, folks. I was doing this deep dive. You're gonna get this detailed analysis, picking some nits. That is the ultimate trivia question. In what book
is Kevin Hackett spelled with one T?
You could do that one, but also you could do the whole Mary Maureen. Yeah. What were the two names of Mitch's first love who died in an airplane crash?
Even just her last name would be a good trivia question.
What did you just say it was? I don't know. Maureen Hansen?
I think it was Elliot. Let me just double check that. Maureen the Dream Elliot. Mitch Rapp fan. Shout out to Ryan Stack.
It's good IT on that.
Oh, I messaged Ryan because, and just maybe to be open to our fans. Ryan Stack is the world's biggest Mitch Rapp fan. Nobody on planet Earth can ever claim that title. He's the king. But we have also had an open invitation for him to come on this pod since the first day we started this project. We'll clear the schedule. We'll make the time for Ryan Steck himself, the real book spy, to come on. I basically said I'm going to stop bothering him. I'll step back, slow my roll. So I sent him one last message and said, hey, don't want to push, so you won't hear from me again. But just know it's an open invitation if you ever would like to come on the pod. So I'll leave it at that.
Would love to have him on the pod.
Yeah. Elliot. Yep. Just looked it up. Maureen Elliot. Here's a question. While we're just bantering, kind of got away from our plan here.
That was fun.
I bet people like this. I bet people are like, can you just chat about random topics more often? Or not. We'll see. We'll see how the ratings look on this one.
We'll see how the ratings look on this one.
Although,
could be the last time we do this.
You know which episode had one of our highest ratings? The Thomas Stansfield tribute. So maybe we are onto something. Who knows?
Okay.
Or what was I just mumbling about?
Oh, you're saying while we're here, shooting the shit,
doing randomness. Do you think we ever get middle names for anyone? Mitch, Scott, Marcus, Irene? Nothing comes to mind.
We don't know Mitch's middle name.
I don't know. I don't think we would have missed it. I think if it ever came up, I think we would have said something on the pod, and we definitely have not.
Mitchell Rapp. Mitchell, yeah. All right, we need to get IT on that, or the fan, or the
Twitterverse. We need the Mitch Rapp pod Twitterverse.
Does anyone know Mitch Rapp's middle name? Oh, we gotta ask Kyle that question.
Kyle would know, or you know what? He'd be able to make it up. Whatever comes out of his mouth, there it is. Boom.
We need tweet at Kyle tonight. What's Mitch's middle name?
Well, Mitch or anybody. I
Mitch
feel like
Eugene Rapp.
If anybody had a middle name in the series and it was told to us, for some reason, I feel like it would have been Kennedy.
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Irene, Louise Kennedy, something like that.
Right. But here's another one we could do one day. All the aliases that Mitch has used throughout the books.
My favorite is Mitch Cruz, baby. Mitch Cruz.
And there was one book, Mitch Cruz with a K.
Right, Mitch Cruz with a K.
I think I saw one of them, Mitch Cruz with a C.
With a C. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Cox.
Mr. Cox.
Iron Man.
I think it's so bold. He uses his actual first name.
Mike Rapp. Wasn't there one of them? No.
There was one where he did Mike Rapp. Yes,
he did Mike Rapp, yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably a few we're missing. There's definitely a couple that we're missing. I think he says Sherman at one point, or was that Hurley?
That was Hurley. Sherman.
When he's being interrogated.
Yeah, Tecumseh. Tecumseh, something like that. Yeah.
There was definitely another Rapp. There's probably a few more Rapp aliases that we're missing. All right, that could be a Rapp on Rapp one day.
Yeah, there we go.
By the way, guys, if you are enjoying this banter, we have a separate podcast series, the Rapp on Rapp series, where at least once a month, sometimes more, we'll release extra podcast recordings just like this. free time, freestyle, Chris and I. So if you're enjoying this episode, you want more of this style, patreon.com/MitchRappPod, and you can get more of this in your podcast feed every week.
It was pretty funny that you thought of that to look up had we ever not see them together, because I was distinctly seeing that. But just to bring it back to Hackett and Stroble before we finish up, they play,
they've got some scenes.
They got some scenes.
Yeah. What's your favorite one? If you're looking at this list, what are you like? Damn, Hackett and Stroble were badass. Which one of these scenes?
Probably like when they help in the Filipino jungle.
Yep,
that's probably my favorite scene with them, because they're with Scott or with Wicker, like climbing through, like having to go like through the mountains and try to get up to that, in time for like Mitch's thing. That's pretty cool.
I think they strategized too. Like I remember Wicker was, because he was so quick, he'd go ahead like a scout and scout things out. And like Hackett and Stroble were like overwatched somewhere. They were radioing in. So yeah, I like the stealth of that scene for sure. I like the Jansen scene because it's pretty early on in the third option when they're set up on this overlook watching the Jansens pull into their driveway.
Right.
And they think they're just going to spy on them and track them. And then someone, I think it was Doozer pulls up, guns down the Jansens. And then they're like, what the hell was that? And they were already freaked out about working with Iron Man. And then they were expecting to just, follow this couple, not knowing who they were. And then they just get brutally gunned down. And I feel like that was a memorable scene. They were on Overwatch with Scott.
And they also, Scott has them sent to Donatella.
Yes.
And bring her back from Italy after she kills Peter Cameron.
Yeah. They're on watch. Oh, wait a minute. No. We missed a big one. The phosphorus grenade down the mouth of Prince Rashid at the end of Consent to Kill. They're there because remember how Rapp got to the prince in that complex, like that Alhambra in Spain? They pretended
talks to the ex. Yeah.
They got, it was Scott. Scott hooked them up because of his military contractor buddy. They got the uniforms of Prince Rashid's guards. Hackett and Stroble got them, and they carried Rapp in like he was injured. Oh, no. They carried in the terrorist that they captured because he was injured and beat up. And he's like, they say the angel of death is here. Talking about Rapp. And then Rapp shows up and just pops everybody.
Right.
It was Hackett and Stroble, I think, who donned the uniforms and snuck in with them.
It was. Yeah, they have some pretty good scenes. And then after Act of Treason, we don't ever see them again.
That's it.
No mention.
They're ghosts.
Interesting.
They're gone. Yeah. You think we lose them? You think Scott lost them in an op, or does Scott fire them?
I wouldn't say fire.
Or do they retire?
I think they just retire because they were there pretty early on. And so they're pretty early on, and they're already out of the SEALs. So
they're just doing contracting work.
Reavers was there early on, but he was still active duty.
He's still active, yeah.
But Scott's still there and kicking. But Scott's old.
Scott. You said what? He was 50 in Last Man, which means
that's what they say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they just get out.
Yeah. Hey, good for them, right? Like, do your time, serve, go work in the private sector, make a buttload of money, and that's a pretty solid ending for them if they just disappear. Because how many times have we been in Rapp's head, even in Transfer of Power, talking about you can't get out, and Third Option is definitely about you can't get out. Hackett and Stroble seemingly took the money, earned it, and got out. We could hope.
I think I remember one time Irene was saying that like the government contracts that Scott's company gets affords them big buku bucks.
They're the good ones.
He's making a lot of money from the United States government. So
I think it's like a Blackwater type of thing.
Probably
even less like in the public eye though.
Yeah.
Like on the official ledger.
Well, we know like a lot of stuff that Mitch does is not on the official ledger.
Yeah, that's Stansfield's money though.
And especially like all the every time like we go to a random house that's like that house out in Virginia that's not on the books.
Right.
That's been owned by the CIA for years.
And that's the money stream that Stansfield set up with all the senators.
Right, exactly.
Were in his pocket, yeah.
Yep.
Cool, man. That was fun. And I think and hope we did justice to the good old boys, Mick Reavers, Kevin Hackett, 2 T's, and Dan Stroble.
Yeah, no, that was fun. I like doing these character analysis, talking about these each character arcs, even if we only get them for a short time.
Yeah, and 3 characters that don't continue with Kyle. So that helps us wrap up Vince's writing before we transition. And Kyle really leans on Maslick and Coleman.
Sure.
And Marcus, I think Kyle has definitely brought in quite a bit. So Reavers, Hackett, and Stroble, I think this is it. C'est la vie.
Yeah, we get Kyle brings back some other characters. Donatella makes a reappearance.
Right.
We get a new one like Grisha and the Russian president.
Mike Nash has somewhat of a role to play here and there.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, I checked on Sidney Hayek. Do you remember we were wondering if Sidney Hayek comes back in the Survivor?
Yeah, does she ever come back in?
Unfortunately, she's not even mentioned in the Survivor.
Mm.
And if she was going to come up, I figured that would be the book, right?
For sure.
She was so deep in this investigation. But no, BB Kincaid, we'll get to her next month.
Oh, BB's a character that Kyle likes to use.
You know who else Kyle made, who I really like, who was still around as of Total Power? Fred, the pilot.
Fred Mason. Yeah,
Fred
I like
Mason.
him.
Yeah. Oh, and Bruno McGraw. That's one of Kyle's babies.
Yes, Bruno.
He adds to the team. Bruno McGraw is Kyle Mills.
Mick
Mills
Reavers.
is Mick Reavers. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Essentially, yep.
Who else is in that crew? You got Maz, Bruno, Scott. Is there one more?
I'm going to pay more attention to this going forward now.
Yeah, I think that's it, though.
Yeah, I think that is.
That's that. I'm thinking of that chase scene in Lethal Agent, or the helicopter scene at the pub, at the cafe in Total Power, and I think it's just Bruno, Maz, and Scott.
Right. All right, well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. When we come to you next time, we're going to be giving you an interview with... You want to introduce them, Mike?
Yeah, we're going to have on some friends from the Self-Defense podcast, Greg and Doc. So if you want to tune in, check out some of their work before you hear from them with us talking about Mitch Rapp. They run a podcast all about self-defense. I believe they are instructors in martial arts and have a self-defense training academy that looks kind of unique. We're going to break down some hand-to-hand combat scenes, some of the weapon choices in the books, and they're huge Mitch Rapp fans, so we're just gonna talk rap with them. And you can check them out, the Self-Defense podcast.
Cool. All right, be on the lookout for that. And so as always, we got to thank our patrons, including our special operator Sherry F.
I got one. I'm sorry. What if, to get ready for that podcast next week, if you have a favorite Mitch Rapp fight scene, any sort of fight scene, hand-to-hand combat, action scene, you want us to break down with the guys at the Self-Defense podcast, let us know. Hit us up on social media, and we will try to bring it up next week when we talk to them.
Boom. Yeah, we'll post that on social.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. We'll post that on social. Get to us. We'd love to discuss, what you guys think. So, as I was saying, our special agents.
Okay.
George, Matt, Don, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Subscribe, rate, and review. Find us at MitchRappPod.com or on Twitter or Insta at MitchRappPod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.